Mary had a little lamb.
We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
Believe me, help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
America's free market democratic system has been good for companies like Toyota for a long time. So why would Toyota support politicians who try to overthrow the very system that's been so profitable for them?
1953 model GOP has real class.
Toyota's given more money than any company to the seditious politicians who voted to overturn the 2020 election result. They even hired Mitch McConnell's former chief of staff as a lobbyist. Toyota's #1 at finding ways to financially reward the very party that took our nation to the brink on January 6th, helping finance a movement that violently sought to take votes away from American customers, not to mention Toyota's own employees. It's time to call Toyota's corporate leadership. If they don't reconsider where they send their money, Americans will reconsider where we send ours.
So that never aired. No, it never did. The Lincoln Project ad against Toyota's funding of 147 insurrectionists supporting Congress members never aired because, one, Comcast refused to air it. Pull the plug, everybody. Just pull the plug. Sling works. Sling's great. Apple TV. All that. Dish. Direct. We're channel 348 on DirecTV. We're channel 9415 on Dish Network. We're on Roku, Sling, Apple TV. 40 million homes is where we are. But honestly, that never aired because Comcast refused to air it, #1. And #2, Toyota, I guess, got a preview and said, oh, my God. Oh, for Pete's sake. Oh, for the love of Jesus.
Oh, for God's sake.
We can't have that. So they reconsidered, and now their political action committee, their PAC, will not give money to the 147 members of the GOP who supported the mob during the Capitol insurrection and still voted after the violence not to accept the certified election results. So that's good. That's like really good. So I will tell you that, you know, at the beginning of the at the first information that we got about the insurrection, companies who depend on consumers, you, me, to buy their stuff and crap, withheld their money. They said, you know what, we're not going to contribute to people who are literally trying to suppress people's votes, who literally don't want to accept a free and fair election, who are promoting a big lie, which is dangerous, and who support violent insurrectionists. We're just going to withhold our money. But shortly after the brouhaha died away in, Mitch McConnell's floor speeches and Kevin McCarthy's "we're guilty of sin" speeches, and this was our fault, and very, important people aided and abetted. All of a sudden they thought, coast is clear, let's start funneling money back to the GOP, the corporate Republicans, right? And there was blowback. People are not deaf, dumb, and blind, and people started to say things out loud about, I guess I will buy a Ford, or I guess I will buy a Hyundai, or I guess I will buy, some other brand of automobile, okay? And so after the PAC, the Political Action Committee, resumed their giving, they went on to donate $56,000 to representative from West Virginia, Alex Moody. They gave 37 other Republicans who opposed certifying the results of the election a crap load of money, like tons of money, okay? That's when the Lincoln Project decided that it was going to start airing these commercials, and not just about Toyota. There were other donors like Boeing and Koch Industries. I'm shocked, I tell you, shocked. Lockheed Martin and Walmart and PNC and U.S. Bancorp and more. Now, I will tell you that Koch Industries and Boeing, they topped the list. They gave $210,000 and $122,000 to congressional election objectors since the Capitol riot. So the Lincoln Project has vowed not to sit idly by and watch as companies like these benefit from our economic strength as a democracy, and then just ignore the fact that we have a faction of legislators who are actively serving under our Constitution, where they take the oath to protect and defend against all enemies, public and domestic, and instead start promoting the big lie and support not certifying free and fair elections. So the lobbyist or government relations person for Toyota put out a statement hours after the Lincoln Project ad was posted on Twitter and Facebook and various other platforms. And they announced that they would change course and they would stop the donations. And their statement to you, the American people, through their Edward Lewis, I guess he is the government relations, which, by the way, I've always told you, when you see government relations on a corporate business card, that means lobbyist. When you see association, like the National Rifle Association, like that, that's a lobby shop. Just a little handy dictionary, I guess, thesaurus for you. They said Toyota is committed to supporting and promoting actions that further our democracy. Our company has a long-standing relationship with the members of Congress across the political spectrum, especially those representing our U.S. operations. Our bipartisan PAC equally supports Democrats and Republicans. That's called hedging your bets. In fact, in 2021, the vast majority of contributions went to Democrats and Republicans. That's carefully worded, who supported certification, of the 2020 election. We understand that the PAC decision to support select members of Congress who contested the results of the election troubled some stakeholders. Oh, man. We are actively listening to our stakeholders at this time, and we've decided to stop contributing to insurrectionist members of Congress, to those members of Congress who contested the certification of certain states in 2020. Can you imagine getting paid $1,000 an hour to write that crap, to write that swell? There are people that just sweat over keyboards all day trying to tell real stories about real people with real messages and real lessons and life lessons and moral. And these people, they squandered their legal educations. And now for low bargain basement price of $1,000 an hour will write these parsed statements after they get caught supporting insurrectionist Congress members who violate their oath of office by simply showing up every day. It's just so unbelievable. But I will tell you that the Lincoln Project, this is the reason why I brought this up, had such a detailed plan. Their plan was so awesome and so specifically targeted. I wish we had data mavens, in our fold, in our tent. We don't. We have 4 people that work on our show. You have Brett, you have beautiful Ashley, who, helps you with your customer service problems, questions, and solutions. We have Sean in Virginia and me. That is the whole show. But the data people over at Lincoln Project, my God, they were going to schedule this ad to run on Fox Business and then local CNBC in Plano, Texas, near the American headquarters of Toyota, and in New York City. And digitally, they identified the top 20 Toyota dealerships in the United States, and they were buying local ads in those markets. Beautiful. What a plan. Mwah. If only Air America would have thought of that.
all things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, The Randi Rhodes Show.
I grew up in the Jim Crow South, and it's happening again. During the Jim Crow era, anybody that did not want a black or brown person to vote, all they had to do was just say, well, he's not eligible. Now, they just say, I'm challenging their right to vote. Well, I'm back in the Jim Crow era. I've been fighting this fight for over 75 years. Much too long. People have lost lives. Other people have shed blood. Most of us started the fight before we had the right to vote, and we are still fighting. You can imagine my legs might be getting tired by now, but you know what? We are not giving up. We are going to continue to fight. We must stand up proudly and say voter suppression laws are not going to work.
That's Gloria Jenkins. She is a civil rights activist and has been, as she just told you, for 75 freaking years. Now, why in the freest country in the world? Why? It's live free and die for the South, right? Because they don't want to get vaxxed. They don't want to get vaxxed. We'll talk about that. But live free and die, or die and die quickly. That's the motto for the GOP, the death cult. But why do we have to fight so hard for our right to vote? Because that is the day that you have all the power. I mean, all of it. And people who refuse to do anything to make America great, to make America good, to make America stay safe, healthy, wealthy, and wise. The people who aren't interested in that as the goal of the world's greatest democracy, they don't want you to vote. They don't want you anywhere near your power. They want you fighting each other. They want you dying and dying quickly, which really freaks me out because at the rate that these red states are dying now from the Delta variant, we went from, what did we have, like 12,000 cases a week or something like that. It's now up to 14,000. It's on the rise, like a 20% increase from this Delta variant. And they're willing to just die. They're willing to just die. It's just so amazing. But anyway, I don't want to get there yet. So why in the world do we have to fight for 75 years for the right to vote? If it's no big thing, if it's not a big deal. Because it is a big deal. And I have to tell you, there is one group of people in this country who have been fighting, who have had a lifelong vendetta against voting rights. They've been obsessed with keeping you from voting, and they've been obsessed with keeping you from social safety nets, from unemployment benefits. They're still telling you that, we can't give you money. We can only give corporate money. We can't give you money. If we give you money, you'll become fat and lazy. If we give corporate money, they will become productive. What? Really? And they've sold you this bill of goods for 75 freaking years. Now, I will tell you, there's this fabulous, fabulous article that is in the homework today called The Revenge of John Roberts. And it goes through a very brief history of John Roberts' tenure beginning in 1981 when he first went to work right after his Supreme Court clerkship, and he arrived at the Justice Department in the Ronald Reagan administration. And he was made the special assistant attorney to the Attorney General of the United States, and he focused on voting rights. Hard to believe, but that's what he was doing in 1981. And in 1981, he was trying to gut the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act of 1965. He was trying to gut it. It was up for reauthorization, and that included Section 2 of the law that gave voters a tool to fight discrimination and discriminatory laws in the states. And John Roberts tried and tried and tried to stop that reauthorization. He literally drafted op-eds. He literally wrote talking points like all these freaking lobbyists do, right? And they put out the statements and all that crap. And he wrote memos arguing that the reforms that would give people who were discriminated against in law, this might explain why they're anti-teaching critical race theory in law school, because you might actually read about Jim Crow or Section 2 and the attacks on Section 2, and his name might actually appear in the curriculum. But anyway, he wanted to take away the power from the people. They had too much influence, and that the state should make the rules and you should live with them. You should follow them. And it failed. He failed. The Voting Rights Act was reauthorized in 1981, I guess, and it passed with bipartisan support. And it kept on getting reauthorized throughout our history. Now, why it has a sunset provision is just so bizarre. Okay, it's like we finally banned assault weapons, but hey, let's let it sunset and see what happens. And now we have gun violence through the freaking roof, right? And mass shootings with semi-automatic weapons. Okay, but John Roberts has been on this lifelong vendetta since he began in the Reagan Justice Department. So here you have like guys like who read one Ayn Rand book, right? Atlas Shrugged, which apparently took that freaky old lady like 13 years to cobble together, right? And anyway, Paul Ryan decided that keep people poor, that's a really, really good tool. And Roberts said, and keep them powerless too. And that is the double whammy that you get from Republican legislation and Republican ideology, right? So at this point, the GOP's only strategy is to suppress the vote or engage in election fraud. And I don't know what they're going to choose for 2022, but I will tell you this. People in the red states are dying. I mean, Springfield, Missouri, right on the border of the Ozarks there. Beautiful, but just red, and ideologically distrustful of any authority, of any, Dr. Fauci, he's terrible, he's a liar. Biden, I just hate him so much that whatever he tells me to do, I'm going to do the opposite. Masks have become politics. It was just crazy stuff, right? And they're literally running out of ventilators in their hospitals again, with a surge in the Delta variant and all this stuff. And I promise you, it's all based on watching uber right-wing swill and disinformation, misinformation to keep people poor and stupid and disenfranchised. But as these people die, right, there'll be less of them, and there aren't that many left, as you know. Only 25% of America identifies as a Republican anymore. So as they die off, doesn't that mean that the GOP is going to have to either fraudulently redistrict or somehow cheat or make it impossible to receive or to participate in the ballot, right? To get a ballot, to get to the ballot or to get it to you. This is your future. This is your future. Fraud and cheating.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
From the former president and his lawyer and his team trying to convince people actively in real time to not certify results, to find new votes to offset the election, to get the outcome that they want, as Rudy Giuliani was recorded saying. This isn't being done in a secret room somewhere. This isn't a clandestine operation. This is very public. There was an attempted coup in America on election night perpetrated by the person in the most highest power position in the world. And ever since then, it's hard to believe, even though Joe Biden won, even though Democrats control the House and Senate, voting in America has gotten harder since that night. And if Democrats need to understand that the way Republicans are going, if they have their way, if they're allowed to do this unchecked, we will never have a fair election in this country ever again. And Republicans will make it so that the outcome will always be that they win. They are trying to impose a minority, radical, extreme view on the majority of this country. And of all the priorities that we have, and they're all important, climate change, gun reform, dealing with COVID, getting the economy back together, nothing supersedes our democratic rights.
Exactly. Nothing will matter. Nothing will matter. When you have a party who makes it very, very hard to vote, and all that's left is the idea that you think you can vote, but if you actually tried to do it, it would be really, really hard to get there, or really hard to register, or really hard to, understand what the hours are, or make the hours, or whatever it is. When there's only an idea that you can vote and you really can't do it, like Texas. Texas is the hardest state in America to vote. Do you know that? Their voter turnout rate is 44th in the nation. And what they've learned from making it very, very hard to vote in Texas is that it suppresses voter turnout, and now everybody's trying to copy the unbelievable suppression efforts that have been successful in Texas, and Texas is doubling down and making it even harder in the hardest state to vote with their special session, which is happening right now in Texas. And the extreme radical right-wing agenda is also on the ledger, on the docket for the special legislative session that Governor Abbott called to have happen. I mean, in Texas, they are literally not just doing this voter suppression bill, which is unfreaking believable. In Texas, you have to be deputized in every single county if you want to sign up a voter in that county. And, there are 254 counties in Texas. So you have to go get deputized in each and every one of those 254 counties if you want to register a voter in any of those 200. I mean, this is just so sick. It's so sick what they do. So, yes, they're trying to suppress the vote in Texas with this, HB House Bill 3 and Senate Bill 7. And that's why they're in special session. But I just want you to understand that also on their docket, also on the agenda, is far-right priorities that are not popular anywhere in this country, like banning critical race theory, which is not taught in public schools. It's not taught. Banning little kids from participating in sports if a little kid looks like a girl to you but identifies as a boy. They shouldn't be able to play on the baseball team or the football team. I mean, this is just so ridiculous. This is what they're spending their time doing in a special session. Now, when I tell you that these are not popular things in this country, women all over this country are not fond of, the limits on their ability to have medical freedom, let's say, when it comes to their bodies. You've got states in this country that are limiting the ability to make a decision about whether or not you want to go full term with a pregnancy literally 2 minutes after you miss your period, right? Literally, the day that you find out you missed your period is the cutoff date for doing anything about being pregnant. I mean, these people are just so bizarre and so strange, and these are not popular things, which is why you can understand that they can't appeal to people in a majority way. So they decided that they are going to restrict voter registration. They are going to restrict innovative voting methods, such as driving through and voting. Why is that a particularly fraudulent behavior? It isn't, and there was no fraud with drive-through voting. Why are they limiting curbside voting for people who are disabled and can't walk through the school? What's the fraud associated with that? There is none. It didn't happen. What is the fraud associated with extending voting hours so that in urban counties where people work shifts or where people do have disabilities, what was the fraud that happened there? None. There was no fraud. But now they want people with disabilities to show proof of their disability to get access to a mail-in ballot because they're doing away with the curbside voting and they're doing away with the drive-through voting. So now you have to get out of your car. Now in Texas, you could only get an absentee ballot if you were over 65. So it was already hard. And now they're just going to get. So guess what Beto O'Rourke is doing? I just want to show you how we solve some problems with them. I'm going to tell you a personal story, okay? This is tedious and this is torturous work, but Beto O'Rourke got himself deputized. He is literally going door to door to register voters. And he feels like it's a worthwhile thing to do because in Texas, there are literally 3 million unregistered voters. 3 million. Now, just for compares, right? Joe Biden lost the state of Texas by 630,000 votes. Now, that's a big chunk of voters. It's legitimate. He lost. Nobody's saying he didn't. But if you have 3 million voters who are unregistered because it's so hard, there's no online registration in Texas either. At least here in Florida, you can register online. At least here in Florida, you can go to Rock the Vote and register to vote and check your registration. No, you can't do that in Texas. So they have 3 million unregistered voters. And based on demographic data, which Democrats use, they know that roughly 2 million of the 3 million would vote for a Democrat if they registered and went to the polls. And so Beto O'Rourke and others in his group, he's not running for office ever again, but he came pretty close to defeating Ted Cruz. But he is literally registered as a deputy registrar in 15 counties, in places as large as Harris County, which is Houston, and small as Rains County, which is east of Dallas, with a population of 10,000. And he's going door to door and registering people. Now, you could do stuff like that, too, in Texas if you are so inclined. But you would have to get deputized and all that stuff. And it is tedious and torturous. And it is freaky hot. But that should only make you even angrier because we do have human-caused climate change, global warming. 121 degrees in Canada, 120 degrees in Death Valley. I mean, this is crazy.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
So far this year, 17 state legislatures have enacted 28 new laws that will make it harder for Americans to vote. These bills, now, be clear about enacted, these bills have already become law. They are now on the books. And that's not to mention the nearly 400 bills that state legislatures are attempting right now to pass. You know what's going on in Texas right now. This all is designed, I believe, to make it harder for you to vote so that you don't vote. And let's talk about what exactly these laws will do. What will they actually do? Well, let's say in the last election you may have voted early because you work long hours. Well, these laws will cut early voting. Let's say your cousin voted by mail to avoid the long lines. Well, these laws will cut vote by mail. Mm-hmm. Say your coworker, say your friend next to you, friend. Voted in person on election day and put on that sticker with pride. Well, these laws will make it difficult for folks who wait in line. These laws create obstacle upon obstacle. These laws make it harder for you to vote because they don't want you to vote.
That's true. That's it. Yesterday, Kamala Harris went down to Howard University and told the attendees at this gathering what the plan was for getting people to vote in light of all of these voter suppression efforts. Now, when legislation isn't something that you think you can accomplish because of the filibuster, you throw money at it, which is exactly what she went there to tell this gathering at Howard University that the Democratic National Committee was prepared to do. They were going to throw money at this.
With this $25 million, the Democrats are investing in the tools and technology to register voters, to educate voters, to turn out voters, to protect voters. People say, what's the strategy? Well, I just outlined it.
Okay, that really got on my last nerve. And here's why. I like her. You know I like her. I liked her a lot when she was, on the Senate Judiciary Committee. I liked when she asked Bill Barr, has anybody ever asked you to investigate them? Or has anybody ever suggested, inferred? Remember? And I liked her when she was running for president. I liked the exchange between her and Joe Biden at the debates where she said, that little girl was me. I like her. I like her a lot. I believe she's very, very smart. And I have a huge crush on her husband. So maybe this is where the hostility is coming from. No. If we do not use our majority, that majority is her vote. Her vote. As president of the Senate, Kamala Harris would break any tie in a 50-50 Senate. Right? Right. But because civil rights, voting rights, are still subject to an antiquated Jim Crow relic known as the filibuster, which, by the way, requires not even lifting a finger by any Republican member or minority party member who would like to stop progress. They don't have to stand there. They don't have to speechify. They don't have to, say why. They don't have to do anything. They just send it down to the floor. I object. And that is it. It's a filibuster situation. Now you need 60 votes to invoke something as arcane as cloture to begin debate. This is arcane and stupid. And for those who are so afraid to get rid of the filibuster for legislation because, if we make change and make progress, they could come in behind us and undo it, a la John Roberts, who has been on this vendetta since 1981. But when John Roberts couldn't succeed in 1981 to shred Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, he made it his life's work to get to a place where he could. And it took him from 81 until 2013 to do it. And he did it. But because 30 years later, somebody with a vendetta could come along and shred the progress that we made, doesn't mean you don't make progress. And that is the counter argument to anybody who would say to you, but if we get rid of the filibuster, then they will undo it later, whatever we legislate into. It takes a long time to undo legislation. You learned that with the ACA, didn't ya? Didn't ya? And when something is popular, after it's been legislated into existence, like mail-in ballots or online registration or motor voter, which we've had in this country since 1993, it becomes a little harder to legislate it out of existence and much easier to sit on the Supreme Court and just write it out of existence, a la John Roberts. Smartest guy in the room. Understood exactly where he could be effective. Oh, screw the legislation thing. That took him 30 years anyway. Now, if you're still not convinced that we could live without a stinking filibuster for legislation, then may I suggest what I've been suggesting ever since the insurrection, actually before the insurrection, and that was to carve out civil rights from the ability to filibuster. Carve out voting rights specifically in this particular case. Just like the Republicans carved out a suspension of the filibuster for Supreme Court nominees and violated their own Senate tradition of no election year confirmations of Supreme Court nominees with Amy COVID Barrett in 7 damn days, 8 days after Ruth Bader Ginsburg died. I mean, the body wasn't even cold. Now, here's the important thing to remember. Senate traditions won't matter if we don't have a democracy. They will be, read about 50 years, 60 years from now after we resurrect or rebuild back to a democratic institution. They won't matter. Tradition won't matter. This is too important. And this is what happened this morning. Okay? I'm sitting there, I'm doing my show prep, I'm writing the show. This is what I do every day, right? And the phone rings, and of course, I answer it because it could be, important. Could be Loretta wanting to complain about this or that, or the food's bad, or she, has a herky in her caducee, and I should be very alarmed. So I answer the phone. It was a local call. So I answer the phone. You know who it was? It was the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, known as the DSCC. Now, why are they calling me? Because I'm on the list. Why am I on the list? Because, I've given money before. And they're looking for money for voting rights. This is the pitch this morning. So I let the nice girl, because they're volunteers, I let the nice girl go through her pitch. I let her just finish. Sometimes when you get a sales call, you just hang up, or you say, I'm not interested, or stop calling me, or I'm going to call somebody, put you on a list, and stop, But I let her do it because she's a volunteer, and I know that. She's telling me we need for you to send money because voting rights are under, assault. And remember, it's the Senate Campaign Committee. This is the Senate, the U.S. Senate, right? This is the Chuck Schumer Senate. This is the Joe Manchin Senate, the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee. And I let her go through the whole thing. And then finally, when she's done, I said, so I'm taking a principled stand. I'm not giving another nickel to the Democrats in the Senate unless and until they carve out voting rights from the filibuster rule. This is too important. Stop effing around. I don't need a fundraising call. I don't need $25 million to go to voter protection because, they just passed laws that said that the crazy partisan poll watchers can intimidate me now. And now I need protection. That's ass backwards. You need to pass H.R. 1, which is S1 in the Senate, and you know it. And you know it because you're an active senatorial Democratic volunteer. And she keeps reading her pitch and go, but. I said, you tell this to Chuck Schumer. She goes, I don't have that kind of power. I said, well, I'm glad you're recording my phone call. Play it for him.
Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream.
Change has come to America.
Believe me. Help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
The Delta variant surging throughout the U.S.
This rapid rise is troubling.
Pfizer now saying it plans to seek federal authorization for a booster dose of its vaccine, saying initial research shows a third shot within 12 months could boost immunity against the highly contagious strain. But overnight in a joint statement, the FDA and CDC saying Americans who have been fully vaccinated do not need a booster shot at this time, adding we are prepared for booster doses if and when the science demonstrates that they are needed. The immediate focus, vaccinating the unvaccinated most at risk.
Simply put, in areas of low vaccination coverage, cases and hospitalizations are up.
According to the CDC, the weekly average of new COVID cases and hospitalizations continues to rise. The Delta variant now accounts for around 80% of cases in western and midwestern states. States like Nevada and Missouri, where the vaccinated population remains low. Adam Wilson waited to get vaccinated, but made it a priority after being unable to visit his 81-year-old father, now battling the virus.
So it's a good time to go do it now.
The White House dispatching response teams and targeting vaccine help to hard-hit communities. But Missouri's governor is pushing back.
I object to the federal government coming in, going door to door to anybody's house.
Still, for Springfield, Missouri's fire chief, whose department hosts vaccination clinics in firehouses, aggressive measures are necessary.
I would equate what's happening in my community right now as a mass casualty event that's happening in very slow motion.
What'd I tell you? COVID was a mass casualty event. We had over 600,000 Americans die from the original wild strain, and now we're watching mutations, and we're up to the Delta. Soon the Lambda is going to be the one that they talk about. But right now, 51% of all the cases in this country are the Delta variant. Now, if we had gotten to herd immunity, as Joe Biden was telling us to do, and we were on track to do it, then the virus would mutate. Why? Because we're not hosting it anymore. And by us, I mean the vaccinated. I mean the intelligent. I mean the people who give a damn about humans and humanity, right? The ones of us that said, I don't really want it. I don't really know what's going to happen. I don't really know if I'm going to get sick for a day or 3 days or an hour or what, but I'm willing to do it because I care about this country and its people. That's who I'm talking about. So what happens? The virus says, oh, it's not, I have no host anymore. I have to mutate. I have to change. I have to change my way of latching on to people because they're vaccinated and I can't reproduce in them anymore. And then the virus mutates and it becomes even more contagious so that it can spread even faster among the unvaccinated. And that is exactly what happened. And so what you have in 29 states is in 1 week, a 165% increase in COVID cases, and 95% of those are unvaccinated human beings. Unvaccinated Americans who are now getting sick are telling their doctors when they get the COVID, because it's miserable, and it lasts a long time. And then, there's long COVID where people are just exhausted all the time. The brain fog thing. I told you I had the brain fog thing. That was so, what it's like? When you wake up in the morning and you're kind of walking in circles in the kitchen trying to figure out how do I make the coffee, or do I make the coffee first, or should I go outside and take a breath of fresh air, or should I walk the dog, or, and you know what you do. You know what you do because it's kind of imprinted. But still there's this active thought process, and it's just confused a little bit for a few minutes before you have a glass of water or before you have your coffee. That's how you feel all day with brain fog. All day. It never goes away. It's miserable. It's miserable. So now people are getting COVID because they went unvaccinated, and they're saying, oh my God, I'm shocked. I'm shocked at how terrible I feel. It hit me like a ton of bricks, and I couldn't even move. I couldn't get out of bed, and I was having nightmares, and I had, this brain fog and confusion and high fever, and I couldn't breathe, and it was in my chest, and oh my God, I was struggling to breathe. Yeah, they're shocked. Shocked, I tell you. Wait till they find out what happens when you stick a fork in an electrical socket. Wait, they're going to be shocked. Wait till they find out what happens when you lick a bufo toad. Wait. I mean, these are like, these are like the hot stove lessons, okay? These are things you should have learned when you were like in before first grade. You don't put your hand on a hot stove, and if there's a virus and a vaccine that prevents the virus, you take it.
Randy, over the holiday, we had our family get together, and there was one member of the family who's dragging their feet, maybe for political reasons. We don't want to pigeonhole him, but Surgeon General Mom was having none of it, was not allowed around the grandkids, the kids, the elderly. He wasn't around at all during the holiday, and I appreciate it. I appreciate her decision.
Well, maybe they just need more information. Maybe that's it. Or maybe what they really need is less information of the kind that they get from Fox News and OANN and Newsmax. Maybe it's the disinformation. And like I said, they're at this point where it's live free and die. Can I just correct the little cliche? It's live free or die. And how is it possible that you are against medical freedom for women, but for it when it comes to a pandemic? Now, nobody is mandating a vaccine. Nobody. Nobody. All anybody is trying to get you to do is care about the economy, care about your neighbor, care about your children, care about your elderly. I mean, that man in that clip right there, his 81-year-old father finally contracted COVID, and now he's going to get the vaccine because he wants to see his dad. I got news for you. You have to wait 28 days or 21 days, depending on what you're taking. Or the Johnson & Johnson, you could do one and done. But you still got to wait 14 days for the vax to do what it does, which is to create a response, an immune response to the virus before you could go see your dad. And by then, I hate to tell you, dude, it might be too late. I hope not. These are all Republican red state areas that have the worst numbers for vaccination, where the Delta variant is making people really, really sick. Some of the worst states are Louisiana and Mississippi. So the Delta is getting hit with Delta. Woohoo! Name recognition, everybody. Also, Arkansas and Missouri. In Springfield, Missouri, they just put out a thing for, we need more respiratory therapists. We need more ventilators. I mean, their numbers are horrendous. Horrendous. I am so tired of watching news stories where the needle goes in the arm because I don't like it. I don't like it. And I'm so tired of having to watch it, and it's because of you red state freaks. Just go get the vaccine. It's really nothing. It's nothing. I was joking around because, all right, if you feel like the microchip went in, it's because the vaccine is kept very, very, very cold. And you can feel the cold liquid. You can feel, it's this much, but you can feel it. People, oh, the microchip, I felt it. No, it's cold. It's just plain cold. It's freezing, freezing, freezing cold. Oh, my God. 95% of all the patients in Missouri that are in ICU are unvaccinated. Why would you give up your power to a freaking virus? You're all so powerful, right? Well, I got an arsenal of guns. Yeah, go ahead, shoot the virus. See how that works for you. I mean, this is crazy. This is mass madness. All because of disinformation, misinformation, screaming about freedom. Yeah, freedom to die.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
There's still pushback about the president's comments about going door to door to encourage vaccinations. The South Carolina governor said today that enticing, coercing, intimidating, mandating, or pressuring anyone to take a vaccine is a bad policy that will deteriorate the public trust and confidence in the state's efforts. And Governor McMaster said he's going to prohibit the state health agency from using the administration's targeted tactics. Can you respond to the governor and explain what it is that is being done and what is not being done in this outreach?
Sure. Well, let me first say that the failure to provide accurate public health information, including the efficacy of vaccines and the accessibility of them to people across the country, including South Carolina, is literally killing people. So maybe they should consider that. But I would say that what this is and what it is not, this is not federal employees going door to door. This is grassroots volunteers. This is members of the clergy. These are volunteers who believe that people across the country, especially in low vaccinated areas, should have accurate information, should have information about where they can get vaccinated, where they can save their own lives and their neighbors' lives and their family members' lives. That's exactly what this is. It's something that's been going on since April, and it's something where we've seen an impact in states where there are lower vaccination rates. So it is something we will continue to work with local groups to do, and it's a disservice to the country and to the people who may lose their lives, who may lose family members, to provide inaccurate disinformation at a moment where we're still fighting a pandemic.
Can you believe that you have channels that brand themselves news, that make their living off of misinforming the American people about vaccines and efficacy of those vaccines and the deadly nature of a pandemic, of a virus, simply because they need to build up fear and fury in this country in order to get voters to turn out? This is why, for my whole adult broadcasting life, after the DJ thing, okay, when I got into talk radio, 1992, I made it my mission to try to make it so that if you were going to brand yourself news, you had to be following basic journalistic standards, meaning you had to have data to back up what you were saying. You had to have sources to back up what you were reporting. You couldn't just sit there like Tucker Carlson does and lie to the masses by asking, cute questions about critical race theory. Would it be okay if they told your kids that they had to hate themselves because they were white? Would it be, I'm telling you, the NSA spied on me, but leaving out the fact that he was talking to Russian nationals trying to get an interview with Vladimir Putin, and those Russian nationals that he was talking to were high enough on the food chain to be surveilled by the National Security Agency, and that he was incidentally listened to or read because he was communicating with foreign nationals who pose a danger to this country, because they are infusing this country with misinformation and disinformation in order to destroy democracy, the oldest, greatest democracy. Well, I won't say the oldest, but the greatest democracy in the history of this planet. From within. Clergy are having to go door to door. Volunteers are having to go door to door in the 21st century to defeat the organized disinformation, misinformation organizations in this country who have an interest in keeping people sick, poor, and stupid. It's the 21st century. We have to go door to door to register voters because Texas refuses to have online voter registration when MTV has had it with Rock the Vote since MTV launched in the 80s. We have to go door to door. We have to go door to door to convince people that a painless, well, it hurts for a second, vaccine to prevent a virus that has long-term ills associated with it and death, especially for older Americans, is a good idea. We have to do that in the 21st century because we have people in this country who are so misinformed and so filled with fury that the messenger is hated so much. For instance, me, the messenger is despised so much that anything I suggest they do, they will do the opposite, whether it's in their best interest or not. They will join a cult. They will become a death cult if the cult leader tells them to die for them. It just goes to show you that no matter what technology does, there is no substitute for data and real information. There is no substitute for journalistic standards. There is no substitute for honest media. There is no substitute for telling the truth. And it takes 2 seconds to tell the truth. Take the vaccine. It will prevent COVID. That's it. And it takes a lifetime to lie. I'm going to play you Marsha Blackburn. She's always been, willing to go down that bad road. When she was a House member, right? Marsha Blackburn was always, back crap and willing to spew back crap stuff in order to, make her voters furious because angry people tend to show up at the polls. What she was, I mean, I couldn't believe this was her on Breitbart Media. This is what Marsha Blackburn is characterizing. Let's say the loyal opposition or people who disagree with her. That's a better, because we're not the loyal opposition anymore. Now we're the majority, and we need to use that damn majority. And that's what infuriates me about the Democratic Party. However, this is Marsha Blackburn talking about people who disagree with her.
I say if we have a socialistic government, if we have Marxism, you are going to be the first ones who will be cut off, because the state would have to approve your music. And, you know, Taylor Swift came after me in my 2018 campaign, but Taylor Swift would be the first victim of that, because when you look at Marxist socialist societies, they do not allow women to dress or sing or be on stage or to entertain or the type music that she would have. They don't allow protection of private intellectual property rights.
They also don't allow you to vote. Marsha. Literally characterizing democracy and the desire for democracy to be attainable for each and every eligible citizen of age to vote somehow makes her talk about Marxism. What the F is wrong with people?
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
Here's another wackadoodle.
No president in history has been dealt a better hand on day one than President Biden. Think about what President Trump left him and what it's become.
Oh, my God. What did Trump leave him? Trump left him in the midst of a pandemic. Trump left him with massive lockdowns and unemployment. I mean, they just sit there and spew this nonsense just to gin up hatred and resentment and fury and rage and a pushback from people who would greatly benefit and will benefit, because checks are going to start going out, you know, under the CARES Act. Checks are going to start going out. Monthly checks are going to start going out to families with small children. This is why the GOP, their entire platform for the next 18 months is to do nothing, to obstruct everything, and to talk crap about Joe Biden endlessly. That's their entire strategy, and then suppress the vote in 2022. Redistrict, gerrymander, voter suppression, and do nothing. Do nothing. And that is why Biden is doing things through reconciliation. Not one single senator voted for money to go out the door in the midst of this pandemic. And we did it through reconciliation. And now people with children at home are going to get $300 checks, $600 monthly checks. And it will cut child poverty in this country by 50%. And according to the Republican Party, that's a bad thing. It's just a terrible, terrible thing. The money needs to go to the corporations. The money needs to go out in subsidies to fossil fuel industry leaders. The money, the big chunks of money, the billions of dollars, has to be given to corporate America, or else America fails. This is what they're selling. And in order to sell it, they have to mask it in hatred and fear and resentment that somebody's getting something that you're not getting. This is sick and this is dangerous, especially when you consider global warming is here. It's not even up for debate anymore, okay? I mean, we had a hurricane here. I had to fly through probably, the bands, and it was, I told you, it was terrifying. It was a white knuckle flight. It was unbelievably scary. Our pilot had to take emergency action to avoid, and we had to nosedive that airplane and get below those clouds really freaking fast. People were crying on my flight home, okay? People were literally crying, I'm scared, and screaming and all that. And at the end of our flight, the pilot got a standing ovation. It was one of those flights, okay? It was really bad. When we got to Florida, the thing was not a big deal because it was moving northeast. I just hit it when it was over Orlando before I got into Palm Beach, right? So now New York gets hit with the tail end of this nothing storm, but it's so warm out that the storm stays somewhat organized, okay? Somewhat together, even over freaking land. And it rains for 3 lousy hours over New York, okay? 3 hours it rains over New York. The infrastructure is so old. I told you I was just there. I went on the subway. The train that I was on was the same train I was on when I was in high school. Swear to God. It's the exact same damn train. And I don't mean the route. I mean the physical train. Same orange and yellow freaking subway train. Same exact tracks. Same everything. And now you get 3 hours of rain in New York. I want to show you what happened at the subway station, okay? This is what happened in an uptown subway station in New York yesterday. See this right here? Look at that flood. That was yesterday. You notice that she's still catching her train because she's a New Yorker. You see that woman is saying, hey, maybe I'll get a seat today, so I'm going to do it. Okay, and then you had another guy who decided he would do the New York potato sack way. Okay, people literally, to get on the train to get home last night, had to figure out how to get through the flood in the subway station. So, like you saw, she just braved it. Okay, this guy over here, he decided he was going to get a big black hefty bag and he was going to use it in the New York subway potato sack manner. But he didn't have it together. He didn't understand how a potato sack worked because he's a New Yorker. You know what I mean? But this is what he did. Well, he's going to get into his hefty bag here like a potato sack. Oh. Hold on to the railing. Hold on to the railing. But he drops the sack and gets wet. But he does make his train. I just want you to know, he does make his train. This is the subway, another subway station. This particular subway station was also flooded, but it was raining from below. Look at this one. See this one right here? If your subway station has waist-deep water, maybe you should just consider taking the ferry. I don't know. But I have to tell you, geysers are coming up from the ground. They're coming up through the subway grates in subway stations in New York City, okay? Now, a real geyser, it's scalding hot, you understand. But the water from the underground in New York is probably even more dangerous. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, this is so disgusting because we have no infrastructure here. This is what the Major Deegan yesterday in New York looked like. This is what the highway, this is a major highway in New York. This is an expressway, okay? Look at that. Now, how is the city supposed to function? You see what I mean? 3 hours of rain they got. 3 hours of rain. And I'm telling you, the GOP is not interested in any of the Republicans who live there being able to get to and from work. Police officers have to take the train. Okay, firefighters have to take the train. Some firefighters from Staten Island have to take the ferry. They're better off because that was built for what? Oh, maybe car manufacturers ought to think about building cars with, outboard motors on them to prepare for global warming. Yeah, just put an outboard motor and a floaty thing. Maybe I could use the airbag as a flotation device. Oh, my God. And they're not interested in passing an infrastructure bill. Not interested. Don't care. Don't give a rat's butt. Couldn't care less about the Republicans who live there. And the same thing's going to happen when Republicans go to vote. You understand. Texas, 44th in voter turnout, and now they're going to layer more obstacles on top. That's going to affect Republicans too, you know. But they don't care because it is Republicans that are going to do all the dying So my best guess is what I said, I've been saying, is probably they're just going to, commit fraud or cheat or something. It's just, this is America in the 21st century. That's what I'm showing you. How pathetic are we? How dumb. And it takes hours, thousands of hours of conservative broadcasting to convince people that we can't do any better than that. Oh my God. 2 seconds to show you the truth. A lifetime to lie.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
It will help you.
I told everybody at my barbershop all at once. We're all talking together. I said, yeah, I'm vaccinated. And it was clear that I was the only one in the entire building as they looked at me as people should look at people when they're not vaccinated at this point. They all looked at me like oh my God, is he going to explode? Is he magnetic? It was pretty crazy.
Really?
Swear to God, it was kind of surreal. Every single one of them were like all of a sudden very concerned that they were near me.
They're afraid for their fertility? I mean, what is that?
I seriously, I had to sit them. I had to very calmly, measured tones. Listen, I'm not magnetic. I feel great. I suggest you do it as well.
Oh my God! Holy crap! Welcome to Florida, everybody. Welcome to Florida. Wow. And we, the vaccinated, you and me, we're on planes. White knuckle ride and all that. But we're on planes and we're going to our families and we're hanging out and going on subways and going into stores. I still wear a mask in a store because I don't, do you wear a mask in your barbershop?
I go in with a mask and I take it off when it's time to get the haircut, just because I just want to avoid the conversation. Even though I'm vaccinated, and they say, we can go to Starbucks, Publix. If you're vaccinated, you're good. And I'm starting to just throw it on because I'm getting looks and, I just don't want to have the convo anymore. So I'm throwing it on places.
Oh my God! No, I wear one. And when I go to a store, if I'm inside with Floridians, you don't know who is a Trumper, except for the people who wear the MAGA hat, and then don't get near me. So I still wear a mask when I go into the supermarket. I wear a mask, in my mom's building. I don't know why I do, because the only people in that building are over 65. It's a over 65 retirement community, but I still wear it in there. And that's about it. I don't wear one when I go see Angie when I get my hair blown out, because everyone in my shop is vaccinated. Every single one is except for Patty. Religious, God's gonna protect her. But I told her, God created science too, Patty. I'll pray for you, she says. Sunny in California.
Hi, Randi.
Hey.
First-time caller.
Oh, hey.
Thanks a lot. Listen, I'm calling about the 30% of this population that is not vaccinated. And it just infuriates me, and I keep hearing, well, they listen to Trump, okay? I think Trump was vaccinated by it.
Yeah, he was.
But most listen to Trump, but they will listen to their personal physicians. And the last thing I heard about a mandate for a personal physician was to do no harm. And in the deep red states, these physicians have a conflict of interest, in my opinion, and that is that their client base are MAGA. And it's not in their interest to be badgering them about a vaccine. And I just want to know, how can they be held accountable?
So you're assuming that people have personal physicians, which a lot of people don't. And that's why clergy are going out to talk to people door to door. That's why people have to volunteer to go talk to people door to door, because most of the vaccination is happening in parking lots. You understand? I do understand that. Hardly anybody got vaccinated. I don't know anybody who got vaccinated by their personal physician. My personal physician, doesn't even have the vaccine. She didn't even have COVID tests. So
Well, maybe then we should re-envision how these doctors are actually the first point of service for this vaccine instead of, if we've got to get these 30% vaccinated, and it's through their physician or in their clinic group or whatever it is, these people are mandated to do no harm.
Okay, you're forgetting that we're not getting vaccinated by our doctors. We're getting vaccinated in Walgreens. We're getting vaccinated in Publix, the supermarkets. We're getting vaccinated in parking lots. We're getting vaccinated. No, I don't know any physician who has the COVID vaccine. Maybe now they do, but when I got vaccinated, like 5-6 weeks ago or whatever it was, the second I got mine in a supermarket.
I understand. Well, where I live here in the Bay Area, there are loads of people with, of course, personal physicians or clinics.
So your doctors, you're telling me your doctors in California are vaccinating their patients?
Absolutely, all over
great.
the place.
Oh, see, here in Florida, you have to go to a supermarket, or you have to go to a parking lot, or you have to go to a Walgreens, or you have to go to a public place. I don't know anybody that anybody's doctor that has a vaccine.
But wouldn't you at least think that clinics and doctors should at least be emailing or sending a letter to their clients?
If they have the vaccines, yeah.
Or just advising them to get this vaccine.
Well,
because
if they
not do so is to do harm.
If they have the vaccines, then yes, they should be telling their patients. They should be sending.
But Randy, I'm just saying, even if they don't have the vaccine, they should be advising their patients as to where they can get the vaccine and telling them they must do this because they're mandated to do that.
I don't know. I think that to do that would mean to tell people who really shouldn't have the vaccine, which is probably a very small group of people with I don't know. I have no idea what condition would require that you not have a vaccine, but I know that there are some health conditions like autoimmune disorder. I don't know. I'm guessing. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I don't want to give any COVID advice. But I don't think doctors have the vaccine here. I'm sure they don't. And if they did, I don't think they would want to send a mass email because it could be information for a particular patient who shouldn't have it for whatever reason. I don't know. That's kind of crazy. But if your doctor in California has the vaccine, you're lucky because that ain't the case here. Where'd you get vaccinated, Brett?
CVS, just on the street.
Right, pharmacy.
Quick, easy. Chip went right in, no problem.
I got mine in the supermarket. Phil in North Carolina.
Yeah, I know how to get Republicans go get vaccinated.
Free gun?
No, you start rumors on right-wing websites that the anti-vax movement is a conspiracy by Antifa to decimate the Republican voter rolls by killing them off with COVID-19.
I'm on it. I'm doing it. I'm doing it.
It should work like a charm.
I'm doing it, Phil. I'm going to go on Reddit. I'm going to go on Gab. I'm going to go on Telegram. I'm going to post it on Twitter. I'm doing it.
Yeah, it'll work. I'm telling you. I got one other little quick thing to tell you about the voter fraud laws.
Yeah.
One argument I never hear made is name any set of laws that are more effective at doing what they are supposed to do than the voter fraud laws that we already have on the books.
Yeah, we have no voter fraud, and we do have voter fraud laws. And they're
the most effective laws of any, ever, all time.
Truly.
All time.
You know why? Because it's a very high-risk, low-return kind of fraud. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
So nobody does it. Nobody does it. Right. And so we don't have any fraud. And you know what? You have to remember all these efforts in all these states to suppress the vote are in response to something that did not even happen.
Of course.
All based on a freaking lie. A lie that, thank you very much, Phil. That was very important what you said. We should all begin that rumor that they're trying to kill Republicans with COVID. And that is why Antifa actually is responsible for all this anti-vax information and misinformation and disinformation. It's to kill off Republicans. Because the truth is, the data will back you up. 29 states, 95% of them, 29 states see an increase in COVID because they are not vaccinating themselves. And 95% of all the deaths are unvaccinated people. Have a good weekend.